What's going on, gamers? It's PhilH here, and welcome back to part 3 of a 4-part masterclass all about vision in Dota 2. For those of you who haven't already, please make sure that you go back and watch the first 2 parts of this masterclass. I'll make sure that they are linked so they're super easy to get to, just because especially in the first video I go over a couple of core concepts in terms of items that will give you the ability to do all this, so that you don't always have to be using these skills, but these skills are just another way that you've got a means to do the same thing. Also, if you haven't seen the second video and you're just getting into this one, please look in the chapter section below, because there will be a chapter for every hero so that you can very easily skip over. If any of these heroes you don't play, then you can just skip to the next one quite easily. Don't be afraid to do that, as well as there's a couple of key terms that I'll use. So if I label something as reliable, that means that it's a very easy ability to pick up and play with, so it'll normally be a point and click. It will also give you sustained vision. So whether that be because it's a cliff walk ability, so you physically move your hero into that spot, and that's what provides the vision, or if it just gives lingering or sustained vision long enough to, for example, clear a ward. The next category that I'll use is something that's unreliable. So that will mean that while it's not impossible to do, it is a bit of a skill shot. It does take, it's not something that you can instantly start playing with, and it will normally be tied to higher mechanical understanding of the hero itself. So whether that be the distance that you have to be away, in terms of, with a leap ability from Mirana, that's a distance-based thing that you have to get a feel for, as well as using things like direct pathing, which is a really important bind for some of these heroes to get effectiveness out of their skills. But yeah, if something's unreliable, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to get consistent. It just means it takes a lot more time, and in high pressure situations it's very easy to mess up. The next will be if something is a cliff walk ability. So that means that you will either physically teleport your hero via means like a blink dagger, for example, or you'll jump or something like that. It just means a way to pass what is otherwise impassable terrain if you're regularly walking. And the last classification specific to this video is free movement. So when we cover Broodmother, we'll go over that. What that means is basically, so long as you're using these abilities in their optimal setting, it will give you the capacity to cliff walk indefinitely. So you can walk up and then walk down unimpeded, whereas other cliff walk abilities will be, you get it for a certain amount of time and then it ends. Alright, so with all that out of the way, let's get into the video. So first up on our list is Anti-Mage. And Anti-Mage has what is essentially a blink dagger as part of his kit. In his second ability, it is literally called Blink. While at the lower levels, it's on a relatively long cooldown. When you do get it to max level, it is on a 6-second cooldown, I believe. So more than enough time to blink up onto a cliff, clear the vision, and then jump back down. So something to keep in mind with Anti-Mage. I'm sure most people who play Anti-Mage are already aware that you can, blink up anywhere that you want to. Really good escape ability, whether you want to blink up in TP or anything like that. Next up is Warden. And today we'll be covering Spark Wraith. So Spark Wraith does actually give you reliable vision in the area that it is cast. I will show you here as well, something to be wary of, is that you couldn't use this ability during a team fight to grant vision on the high ground to clear wards, just because the Spark Wraith, as soon as it fully forms, it will then look to attack an enemy. So if there is an enemy in the space around it, it will immediately jump to them. So I'm just demonstrating this here with my Crystal Maiden bot, that as soon as an enemy does walk by, it will jump immediately. So while an enemy isn't in the area, it's a great skill to use just to clear the high ground. But during a team fight, not ideal for that situation. But it's reliable, it's point and click, so don't be afraid to use it in this context as well. If you're deciding that you're wanting to play away from the enemy team, and you're looking to just clear vision around you, then Sentry on the low ground, Spark Wraith on the high ground, clear the vision, as well as getting another couple of spots for free. Next up on the list is Bloodseeker. And I'm just showing off the taunt here that's new in the Battle Pass. Most people aren't aware, I believe, that your Blood right here, which is your W, does actually give you a vision in the area. So you can actually use this to clear the high ground, which I don't see enough Bloodseeker players using. which is, considering the really short cooldown that it's on and how cheap it is as a skill, it is a really efficient way. So I'm just showing here that even though the high ground is in the AoE, I do actually have to center it on the high ground to get that vision. But once you place it up there, you can more than easily use it to clear the high ground vision, or just spot somebody if you know that they're up there or you think that they're up there. Really good ability as well on top of the silence. All right, and next up on our list is Broodmother. So as I alluded to in the intro, Broodmother does have complete free movement while on her webs, which is her W skill. So I'm just demonstrating this on another cliff just because when I was testing this before I started recording, I did get some errors with other heroes that I then spawned in being able to cliff walk. So I'm just demonstrating over here for your benefit that if you do have a web down in an area near a cliff, then you are able to freely move up and down on the cliff to clear the vision. So yeah, really good skill. Broodmother's really good for all of us being able to weave in and out of combat, push towers, and escape really easily. But yeah, just good to know that with web you can use that to clear vision as well. Next up on the list is Clinkz. And Clinkz is one of many heroes in the agility section that have just a spotting skill. So with Burning Barrage on Clinkz, which is your Q, this will, as the multi-shot waves come out, this will give you enough vision to at least see that something's up there. It will actually, at the end of the channel, give you enough for one auto attack, but typically this is better with a allied hero to be able to clear it while you're actually channeling the spell. Typically it's not a way that I would use the skill all the time, but in a pinch, if you know that there's vision up there and the courier is not in the area delivering items, or you don't have another hero around to help, or that has a skill themselves or an item that will help you clear it, then in a pinch you can use Burning Barrage just to spot it for somebody else to clear. And very similar to Clinkz, we also have Drow Ranger here, who with her E, which is Multishot, it will work in a very similar way to Burning Barrage, in that it will give spotting vision of the area that it's shooting through. So I mainly use this when I play Drow just as a way, if somebody's trying to juke my team through trees, then I'll fire it off as a way to continue to grant vision so that my team can chase and grant vision, or if they're low and they're trying to juke through trees, then just use that as a sort of AoE clear. But you can also use it for vision as well. Next up is Ember Spirit. Now, while Ember Spirit's main skills don't grant any way to access high ground vision, with your Fire Remnants, which is your ultimate, you do actually have the ability to place a Fire Remnant on the high ground, and then you can use your secondary skill as part of your ultimate to then cliff walk freely. So you can get yourself up there, no issue at all, to clear the vision, and then if you have another Remnant off cooldown, you can use it to get back down. While this isn't something that I would typically use it for, it is something that, again, you've got it as an option whether you're using it. I mean, mainly as escape is the way that I'd sort of use this tech to escape away and then look to TP. But yeah, you can also use it as a way to physically clear vision. Next up is Faceless Void, and most people will know already, but I'll go over it for anybody that hasn't played the hero before. You do have access to Time Walk, which is off your Q. It is a very long cooldown at low levels, but at its max level it's only 6 seconds, so reasonably spammable. And yeah, it just gives you complete and total cliff walk, so you can cliff walk up and then take out a ward, and then once it's back off cooldown after 6 seconds, you can jump back down. You do get access through his shard, I believe it is, to get a secondary ability that will allow you to reverse the time walk. However, I've found that typically you don't get enough time to get up there and then clear it and jump back down, just because the window that you have is only about a second, and it takes you, depending on how high your attack speed is, it will typically take you more than that 1 second to kill the ward off. So typically you're going to end up using the main time walk skill twice in a row, but again, on a 6 second cooldown, more than adequate to be able to use the however much it is. It's less than 200 mana quite easily to clear that vision, so no issue at all. Next up we have Hooodwink, who is my most played hero in all of Dota 2. and the main ability that I want to go over today is Acorn Shot. So most people will be aware that with Acorn Shot, if not targeted directly at a hero, it will leave a tree behind it. What a lot of people don't realize is that that tree will actually grant vision for you. I'll end up making a guide on Hooodwink just because there are a lot of nuances to this skill and how you can use it. You can set it to autocast to force the behavior of leaving a tree behind. But yeah, just for the purposes of this video, if you do use Acorn Shot and point target it on an area that you don't have vision, it will grant vision in a small radius around it. I use this all the time for this sort of skill of just using it so that I can maximize the efficiency of my sentry wards. If I don't want to commit an observer to the high ground, or I don't want to give away that I'm placing an observer, then I'll always put an Acorn Shot first. Just for your benefit as well, with Hunter's Boomerang, it used to be tied to her scepter, but it's now tied to the Aghanim Shard. This will give you a point target spotting ability, so enough to know that something's up there. Say you don't want to commit the Acorn Shot straight away because it is I think it's like a 12-second cooldown at max level. So sometimes I like to check first with Boomerang before I commit the Acorn Shot if I'm clearing a bunch of cliffs. I normally try and check first before I'll commit the skill. If I know that I'm checking 3, for example, then I'll Acorn Shot the first one, Boomerang the second one, and then I'll Acorn Shot the third one again. So yeah, just little efficiencies there, but I'll make a whole guide on Hooodwink specifically. Next is Meepo. So most people, if they're Meepo enjoyers, then they will know that with, what's the name of it? It's Earthbind, right? Yeah, so Earthbind. Just a Q, so Meepo will toss out a net. It will actually give spotting vision along the entire projectile, as well as spotting vision at its terminating location. So you can use it just to spot if there's something on the high ground. With multiple clones of Meepo, it is possible to spam this ability to get more chances to attack it, since you've got multiple heroes essentially. So I'm demonstrating here that you can actually use it that way. But yeah, in super early levels, or if you're if you've split up your Meepos because you're macroing efficiently, then you can always help your supports just by throwing out an Earthbind just to spot something for them. Next up we have Mirana. So there's a couple of abilities to go over here. First one is Sacred Arrow, and then the second one is Leap. So starting with Sacred Arrow, this is her stun ability, which the duration scales with the distance that you cast it relative to where it hits. But it will actually give you spotting vision along the path of the Sacred Arrow itself. So this is just good to know, that you can use it as a spotting ability. It will be enough, as you can see here, to get a single auto attack off, but it's not enough for sustained vision. However, if you use her Leap ability, this does take a bit of getting used to, and as I explained in my previous videos, if you bind the directional pathing hotkey, and then get a feel for the distance. It's very similar to Force Staff for those who are familiar with the push distance of Force Staff. Then you can use Leap to get a consistent cliff jump going on. But yeah, in high pressure situations, it's very easy to mess up. But yeah, for anybody who's looking to main Mirana, and is looking to play that support role of clearing vision, then definitely get used to using directional pathing, because your ability to escape in high pressure situations using Leap along with directional pathing, there's a lot of huge outplays you can do with multiple chained leaps using directional pathing. You can really end up making yourself impossible to catch if you're smart about the way that you cliff jump. Next up we have Monkey King. So this hero is primarily played as a core. He did get last year a lot of attention as a position 4 due to the patches that were around at the time that made it a much more viable strategy. But as a core or a support, Monkey King does get, through his Tree Dance and Primal Spring abilities, ways to get vision of and clear high ground, as well as through the Primal Spring. So you can see here, if you're right next to a cliff and you continue to right click, you can force Monkey King to walk onto the cliff. But if you're too far away, like this one for example, then he will just jump down to the ground rather than getting onto the cliff itself. So there's a little bit of an intricacy around there, just around which trees he's able to directly cliff walk onto a high ground from, and which ones he will just walk onto the low ground. But if in doubt, you can always cast Primal Spring. It is worth noting that while it is a channel, you can actually press the hotkey again for Primal Spring to make it activate quicker. It just basically reduces the amount of damage that it does and the slow amount based on how long it's channeled for. But yeah, if you just want to quickly cliff walk, then by all means you can just Tree Dance and then Primal Spring and immediately activate it again to trigger the movement. Next on our list is Morphling. Very much only ever played as a position 1 usually. There are always exceptions to the rule, but with his Q here, which is Waveform, while this is a relatively long cooldown at 11 seconds at max level, this does give you the capacity to cliff walk. While you wouldn't always use this to clear vision, there might be, in a pinch, if the rest of your team is on the other side of the map, making space for you to farm, and you know that they've got vision here and you just want to clear it for yourself. Just for peace of mind, a bit of extra gold, all that sort of stuff, then you can use your waveform as a way to clear it, and then you can always waveform back down. You might, for whatever reason, have some, either through a neutral item or another item that you've built, gives you some other means of cliff walk. But yeah, in a pinch, you can use waveform in particular to get this done. All right, next up is Pangolier, and there's 2 skills I want to go over today. So the first one being Swashbuckle, and the second one being Shield Crash. So with Swashbuckle, this is a reliable means of cliff walk, but it is, there's a bit of getting used to with the way that the vector works. So first thing you need to know about Swashbuckle is that the place where you will land is the place where you first cast a spell, and then as a second part of the vector target, you can choose the direction that he will then shoot out his daggers in. So I'm just leveling up a few levels here to show you. So Swashbuckle, I first need to activate it, choose the point that I want to swashbuckle to, and then choose the direction that I want to cast it in. So as you can see there, the daggers, as I throw them out, won't actually give me vision onto the high ground, but I can obviously use this to move myself onto the high ground. Conversely here, if I use my directional pathing again to direct myself right up to the cliff, then I can use Shield Crash as a unreliable means of cliff walk. So you can see here, there's a couple of times that I'm not using directional pathing, and he'll, sort of jump all over the place, and jump to the side rather. But if you do use directional pathing first and then use Shield Crash, then you can very easily get onto that high ground to either get vision. So yeah, quite often what I'll do is either swashbuckle up and then Shield Crash down, or I'll Shield Crash up and then swashbuckle down. Depending on, if I'm sitting up for a team fight or something, then I'll normally try and Shield Crash up first, and then just, use myself as a temporary ward. Or if I'm just looking to clear vision, then I'll usually swashbuckle up and Shield Crash down. But yeah, really good to know, just the versatile ways that you can use these 2 skills in combination or individually. Next up is Phantom Lancer. So you do actually get I don't want to call it reliable. I mean, you can make it most of the time proc how you want it to, but you can actually use Doppelganger as a way to try and cliff yourself, so that you can make a escape via TP. So you can see here, very occasionally, so that first time, of course, the first time I try and demonstrate it, it doesn't work, but it will leave an illusion up there. So you can see I'm trying to force the behavior to see, a lot of this is testing for me as well. So you can use it just to physically spot the high ground. If the radius of the spell overlaps, you will sometimes get illusions up there, and then you will also sometimes get yourself left up there. So it seems that most of the time you will end up spawning centered on the radius of the spell, but there is some unreliability in that factor. So something to be wary of is that if you want to try and force the behavior so that you're always on the cliff, then you do want to get the radius, rather the center of the spell, up on the cliff, and that will give you the most chance, but it's not a consistently reliable means of cliff walk. Whereas one of the other heroes that I'll be showing you very soon, if you center it on the top of this, even though it's a radius spell, if you center it on top of the cliff, then you will always appear on top. Next up on our list is Razor. And today I want to go over his first skill, which is Plasma Field. So while I wouldn't use it in the context of warding and dewarding, it is just good to know that Plasma Field will actually grant vision as it extends out from Razor, as well as coming back in. So the ring itself will actually provide vision as it collides, well, as it goes over areas. So you see there, it does actually give me plenty of sustained vision, so that if I wanted to, I could actually clear that ward. But the way that most people will use this spell when they're playing Razor is that if they're being duped through trees, then they'll throw out Plasma Field, so that they can then continue to chase through trees and make sure that they're not being duped. Next up is Riki. Primarily, Riki is played as a core. However, there is space in the game for Riki to be a really effective position 4 player, hero rather, through the ability of his Shard, which provides a sleep dart, in combination with Meteor Hammer. And if you watched the first video in the series, I do actually go over how Meteor Hammer does give you vision of the place where you cast it. So you can actually use Meteor Hammer as a means to clear vision or check for vision. But Riki does also get, through his Tricks of the Trade, a reliable means of cliff walk. So long as the center of the spell is cast over a cliff, Riki will always appear directly in the center of the spell once he comes out of the channel. So that is worth noting. You can see here that there is a bit of room for forgiveness around where the center of the spell actually is. But yeah, so long as you're centering the spell on the place that you want to end up after the spell is channeled, you will always end up there. So you can use it for this means of clearing vision. Next on our list is Slark, super effective core, who does actually get advantages in the vision game just because he's got a passive ability through his ulti, which will give him increased health regeneration while the enemy team aren't able to see him. So you can actually just look at the bottom heads-up display to see whether the secondary ability of his ultimate is active or not. And if it's not, while you're not attacking anything, then that does mean that the enemies have vision in the area. And then through Pounce, which is a unreliable means of cliff walk, you are able to actually clear that vision yourself. So again, with other abilities that are an unreliable means of cliff walk, it does take some getting used to learn the range. And definitely you want to have a directional pathing hotkey bound so that you can start to aim the Pounce itself. And you will get, it is actually longer than the 4-staff range, very slightly. And with Slark in particular, the margin for error is very slim. So this is an ability that you will want to spend a lot of time mastering if you're looking to play Slark. But you can get a lot of free gold just through your ultimate ability actually telling you through the secondary effect whether the enemy has vision of you. So it will normally mean that either there's physically an enemy hero that's invisible near you, or they have an observer ward that's spotting you. So you can see here that I've now got my Shadow Giant's regen active, which is because if you read the description of the spell, it will say that passively, while the enemy can see you, or while they can't see you rather, you get this added benefit as soon as I walk into the range of the observer ward. You can see it's daytime, so that will actually be spotting me from that cliff. Then that means that the enemy team have vision there. So yeah, super busted ability if you know how to use it correctly. And yeah, you can start to sort of really triangulate the exact position of a ward based on whether it's daytime or nighttime and how that affects their vision. Actually, I tell a lie because observers have consistent vision at all stages of the game. It's only hero vision that's different depending on whether it's day or night. Next up on the list is, of course, the low-rank Pop Stumper Sniper. So I imagine most people, if they've played with or against Sniper, they will be very familiar with Shrapnel as an ability. It is always worth keeping in mind that Shrapnel does provide vision on the area that it's active on. So you can also use this to check high ground, not only for sieging, but for this dewarding purpose. If you have extra charges off cooldown, then you can actually use it to check the high ground so that you can clear it to help supports or God forbid you're playing a support sniper, which I do not endorse. But you can use this ability in that context as well. Next up on our list is Spectre, and today I want to be going over Spectral Dagger. So Spectral Dagger, as most Spectre players will be aware, it will actually give you free pathing, or free movement rather, along the path that the Spectral Dagger is fired in. So if you have vision of an enemy and you fire off a Spectral Dagger, or you can just point target it, then you can actually walk along the path of the dagger and you will get free movement. You will see that I have a buff in my heads-up display that is telling me that I have access to free pathing along that. However, I am actually fault testing here and discovering that when I'm on the cliff, if I'm standing right up against the cliff and I throw the Spectral Dagger, then I'm not actually able to move off the cliff. But you can see here, if I move back, I'm firing off the other way to show. I think, yeah, this is me not actually realizing how it works yet. So I TP off and then I start to experiment with it more. Again, I'm more of a position 4 and 5 player, so I don't play cores a lot. So I never normally use Spectre that much, and if I do, I use a skill like that to get up and then immediately get down again. But I will actually start to experiment here, and you will see in a moment, once it clicks and I start to understand, you can see that the debuff is running off there, and that's when I realize that my free pathing stops. So I activate it again, walk away from the path, walk back onto the path, and it refreshes the debuff. And then after a certain duration, the spell wears out. And this is really, to get a good understanding of heroes, this is always what I like to do. And you see, as long as I walk back on the cliff and then cast a Spectral Dagger, it will give me the ability to walk back off the cliff again. So it's whenever you actually pass through the trail, that will give you the ability to cliff walk. But if you're standing on the edge of a cliff and then cast Spectral Dagger in the direction that you want to leave, it won't actually work. So you do actually need to make sure that you've got a bit of the path of that dagger on the high ground that you're trying to leave. Otherwise, you won't actually get to leave. Just a little thing to be aware of with Spectre in particular. Next up, we have Templar Assassin. So for those who play this hero a lot, they will be aware with her ultimate, which is Psionic Trap. It does give you the ability to place these traps that you then get a secondary ability to detonate, which will slow enemies, but it does also give vision in a very small radius around it. So most players will use it exactly like this. They'll pop it directly over a power rune spawn to either check it to see when the power runes spawn, whether it's at that spot or not. But you can also use it as a means to check high ground for vision in combination with a sentry on the low ground. So yeah, really good if you're trying to help your supports deboard so that they're making space for you to farm safely and they don't have the means to clear it. So if they're playing something like a Bane, for example, as a pos 5, Bane's got no abilities to clear the high ground. He would only be able to do something like Force Staff. All of his ability to clear is going to be via items. So in the early levels, if you're looking to get those sorts of heroes to clear vision for you, then just use the mana, help them clear it. They'll more than likely have some sort of way to refund your mana, and then you're getting extra advantages there. You do also get, if you get the Aghanim's Scepter, you get another secondary or tertiary ability to teleport to any of your psionic traps, and then the psionic trap will burst. So that is something to be aware of if you've got the Scepter or you've done several Roches and it's dropped the Aghanim's Blessing so that you've got the ability for free. Then most people will use it. They'll leave a couple of traps at home as a means to leave that way, but in a pinch, if you don't have any available and you want to get somewhere quickly, so that you can safely TP out in a similar vein to this, then you can always just, put a psionic trap on a cliff and then use your, tertiary ability to get to the high ground and then TP out if you were, in that situation. Otherwise, you can do other things, like there are Templar Assassin players that will get a Blink Dagger, and they'll do things like Meld to give them invis so that they then get the Blink Dagger off cooldown so that they can then blink away without breaking the meld. All sorts of, outplay potential for that sort of stuff that you can do as well. But for the purpose of this video, Psionic Trap, great way to help your supports clear vision. Next up on our list, we have Ursa. So mainly what I want to go over with Ursa is Earthshock, which is Ursa's Q. So this is a unreliable means of cliff walk, so you need to be aware that the the distance is very small. So you do need to, I would always advise with abilities like this, again, get a bind for directional pathing, because that will make this so much easier to land. If somebody's walked up a set of stairs and then you know that they've walked to the left or right, you can directional move in the direction that they've moved and then immediately cast Earthshock, and that will enable you to briefly cliff walk and then catch up to them. Or if you're looking for this cliff walk and then TP away, great ability as well. Definitely for us players, do look at my first video again, because I have seen an Ursa player in the past that's picked up a Helm of the Dominator, not only for the ability to spot Roshan timing so that they can quickly get into the pit and get those Aegis, but also, just for the ability to clear vision through other means before you commit that Earthshock to get up, for example. Next up is Vengeful Spirit. So most Vengeful Spirit players will be aware with your W, which is Wave of Terror. This does give you massive vision in a line. It is a reliable means of vision for the sake of dewarding. As you can see here, when I cast it, it extends well past the cliff and gives me, what's that, like 5 seconds worth of trailed vision behind it. So more than enough time for me to be able to clear any wards that might be up there. It's a super low mana cost ability. It caps at like 45 at its highest level. Incredibly good not only for the minus armor, but also for when you're playing the support style. Incredibly powerful for granting vision, not only for dewarding, but also if somebody's trying to dupe through trees, you cast that through, debuff them, it grants, a remaining vision for like 5 seconds behind it as well. Venomancer, I really don't feel there's much to be said for Venomancer, just because most Veno players will know that Plague Wards are your bread and butter, not only for just raw push potential in lane, but these are free wards that are on a very short timer, admittedly, so you can use them as a means to people use them for farming, they use them for pushing, but you can also use them for clearing vision. So pop a sentry on the low ground to maximize its effectiveness for clearing multiple spots at once, throw a Plague Ward on the high ground, and then that's your bread and butter. Easy, 200 to 300 gold every time. And then if you're playing that support or even offlane Veno, really good to be able to help those supports that don't have the means to clear vision. Just keep suppressing the enemy vision, because the less that they can see, the more likely they are to make a mistake in positioning, and that gives your team an opportunity to capitalize on it. And last on our list today is Weaver. So Weaver with Q, which is the Swarm. This gives you very, very, very brief vision. In other videos I've showed, for example, with Mars, with the Spear of Mars, it gives you like what feels like 1 or 2 frames. It's the exact same situation with Weaver. When Weaver throws out the Swarm, it will give complete vision along the path of it, but it's very, very, very fleeting, and the main sort of benefit to this is that if it hits an enemy, then it will leave a little bug behind it, which gives you then sustained vision. So while, yes, it is technically a vision ability, I would never use it in this sort of means. You can see I can get a single auto attack off. So, it wouldn't be worth it for the investment to be consistently checking high grounds, but if you've got a support that is maybe already cleared one or is about to start clearing them, and they've got Arcane Boots, for example, then throwing that spell out just as a means to, save them the commitment of their spell to a spot where there's no vision can be really good. But yeah, just something to be aware of. Most of the time I'd use it if I suspect that somebody's cliff walked, then I'll use it to chase them and keep providing that vision. But yeah, you can use it in this, this means as well. So that is all of the agility heroes. Please let me know if there's anything that you think that I've overlooked. If you got value from this video, then please, share, like, do all those things. And yeah, I'll see you in the 4th and final part. All right, catch you next time.